Welcome into the Sports Thought. Today we're talking about the Suns getting Ty Lue. Yes, we've got our championship coach, elite name. Can't wait to see what he's going to do with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Everything is solved. The decision to move on from Monty, absolutely worth it. Wait, Frank Vogel? Let's dive in. All right, well, if you haven't heard, Frank Vogel just signed a 5-year, $31 million deal to be the Suns' next head coach. A bit of a surprising move. We did not end up getting Nick Nurse, who was viewed by many as the top candidate. Whether or not he spurned us or wasn't really in the running, hard to say. There's conflicting reports on that. We did not get Ty Lue, who was the dream candidate. Maybe that was always just a pipe dream and was never actually going to come to fruition. But you moved on from Monty, a coach with good success who just got the biggest deal in NBA history, and you've replaced him with Frank Vogel, who's not been a head coach now for the last year. In fact, the last time he coached was the 21-22 season, which is the same year following, right, May of 2022, that then Monty Williams won Coach of the Year. So this is an interesting move. Now, got a better resume in some ways than Monty, right, because he has a title. This is actually the first head coach the Suns have had that has an actual championship title. So on one hand, that feels good, or has some hope to it. But then when you really look at Frank Vogel's history, there are some red flags and question marks. So the fact that he hasn't coached in a year, it is a bit of a red flag and something to kind of pay attention to. His overall winning record of 526 is below what Monty Williams put up here with Phoenix. He's coached for 11 years, 6 years with the Pacers. Those are the main years that you want to look at, because in those 6 years with the Pacers, they had 5 winning seasons, they were a dominant defensive team, and they were battling in the Eastern Conference to get to the finals, frequently losing out to LeBron James. Then 2 years with the Magic, and they were ugly. Now, I won't necessarily hold that against him, because every coach with the Magic has ugly years. They are not a winning organization. And then 3 years with the Lakers. Of those 3 years, the first year is the main one. That was the title year. That was also the bubble year. A lot of people will discredit that, saying, well, it happened in the bubble, weird atmosphere, things like this. I don't know if you really should, though, because in some ways it's even more difficult to win in that scenario, in that environment. There were no fans. It was really unique. You had to stay within that bubble. So the fact that they were able to pull that out, I view that just as good as any other championship. Really shouldn't be discredited. However, it was the first year with that team. It was the first year of pairing Anthony Davis and LeBron, and everything came together health. The following 2 years after that went downhill. So the next year they still had a winning season. Third year not had a winning season, and then he was fired and let go. All right, let's look at this from the Suns' perspective. Okay, the big selling point, like we said, he's the first Suns coach with a title on his resume. So he should at least come in with a level of respect because of that and buy-in from the players. You'd hope. Counterpoint to that, though, your star player in Devin Booker wanted Kevin Young by all reports. So how is Booker going to take this? Now, you don't want to cave and just give in to whatever your star players ask for. Also, Booker hasn't come out and said anything publicly. This is just hearsay and what's been reported. But choosing to fire a coach that had been liked and now bringing in a different coach than what your star player wanted is a big risky move, especially because the last thing this organization needs in the future is Devin Booker asking out. He's the greatest player that's ever played for the Suns. He's now elevated and received that title by most accounts, and he's a guy you want to keep as part of the organization for his entire career. So there are some concerns with choosing to go against what he had wanted. What's interesting, too, is there were multiple reports. Bill Simmons had been saying for weeks it was definitely going to be Kevin Young, and in large part, I believe, because of what Devin Booker had wanted. It's now being reported that Matt Ishbia made this call. So whether or not that's overruling James Jones, it's now the second or third time that we've heard that a call was made by the owner and not by the general manager, and by some accounts was made even against the general manager's wishes. So for instance, in the Kevin Durant trade, James Jones was not willing to give up Mikal Bridges. It's one of the main reasons that deal wasn't done in the offseason previous. James Jones was unwilling to give up Mikal Bridges. He viewed him as a critical core piece of the team and was not willing to part with him and all of the picks and other players for Kevin Durant. Matt Ishbia, the new owner, comes in, wants to make a splash, overrules that and says, nope, include him, move on, and get this deal done. Which time will tell if it's a good call. I think it was the right call. You don't get many opportunities to get one of the greatest players of all time to come to your team. You've got to take that gamble. So just because Matt Ishbia pushed for it doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad thing. Doesn't mean that James Jones didn't really agree with it. It's also possible that Robert Sarver tied James Jones' hands on this somewhat too. But the reports were that the call and decision was made by Matt Ishbia. So you have that. Now you've got that the leading candidate was Kevin Young for some time, and then all of a sudden the reports are Matt Ishbia changed that. So this is interesting. Reportedly he did it too because he wanted a flashy hire and someone with experience. Frank Vogel is not a flashy hire, so I don't know where they were getting that idea that he would bring that. He is a well-liked coach as far as critics go. They view him as a solid defensive mind that at times has had a lot of success and was maybe a scapegoat with the Lakers. But he's not an offensive guy, and we don't have the correct pieces to be a stalwart defensive team, and we don't have draft picks or compensation or things to go out and get other players that might fit Frank Vogel's scheme with. We also haven't seen Frank Vogel coach different types of systems. He coaches his system. So there's risk with this. A lot will depend on how this roster looks next year because there's going to be a lot of turnover with it. But again, that doesn't mean we're necessarily able to get the defensive players that really fit his system. Does this now mean that DeAndre Ayton is staying? Can Frank Vogel turn him into a defensive stud and get him to buy in? Or is Ayton still gone? I mean, by all accounts, the organization's ready to move on from him. But does this change it? I mean, Frank Vogel does have good experience, though, and around the league appears to be well respected. So, I mean, there's some weight that you could put into that. However, I think for a team that went out and got Kevin Durant and the idea that you're going to get this big name and talk of Ty Lue, this is a bit of a letdown. The other question that's going to be interesting to see is, does Kevin Young stay? Because to me, that's what really makes this a good hire. If you're able to say, great, we bring in Frank Vogel, we've got our defense now set. He's going to really turn this into a solid defense that locks teams down. And Kevin Young is willing to stay on and really run the offense with Devin Booker's buy-in, with Kevin Durant. Okay, now you might have something special. That might be a really neat pairing. And the reports are that it's up to Kevin Young. They'd like to have him stay. Question's going to be is, does he want to, though? I mean, he's viewed as a top candidate around the league. He was in the running for this position, and he had the star players backing, and you chose not to hire him. So we're going to have to see on that. But if you can keep Kevin Young, that will be a big, big piece of this overall deal. All right, so what's the end outcome? Well, as a Suns fan and as an Arizona sports fan, you know exactly how this is going to work out. Next year, Durant will get hurt. He's going to miss the majority of the year. Booker will be burnt out because he will be the entire offense because they don't run an offense. It's just going to be isolation ball because that's Frank Vogel. They won't have the right pieces on defense, and so the defense will be average. And they will make the playoffs because of star talent and then get blown out probably at home in round 1 or round 2 in an elimination game. Things are looking up. Stay tuned. If you liked what I put out, please like and subscribe. Thanks.